Hey, Pastor Josh here. We're reading Acts chapter 7, verses 27 and 28. And you all know this saying very well. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. Don't nibble on the pinky of the hand that is giving you your next meal. Don't push back on the provision that God is giving you. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. And what we see in Stephen's biblical theological sermon, remember he's given us an overview of the Old Testament. What we see in his story today is that the Israelites are pushing back on God's chosen man, the person that God has chosen to save them. They're actually biting and pushing back. This is going to be a major thing because Stephen is leading up to the very fact that the Israelites have rejected Jesus. They have rejected their Messiah, the promised one that has come to save them. They have bitten his hand, and in fact, they didn't just bite his hand, they pierced his hand and his feet and put a crown of thorns on his head and beat him with a stick and called it a scepter. All the mockery that happened to Jesus happened. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. We're going to see how the Israelites did that, and we're going to see how you and I do it too, unfortunately. Remember, Moses did the wrong. He had the right motive, but he did the wrong action. He knew that he was called to save the Israelites from slavery, save the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. And when he saw one of his fellow Israelites being beaten, he went over to the Egyptian and he killed him. Wrong, incorrect, not the way to do it. He did the wrong action, but he did have the right motivation. So let's see what the result is. What happened after that? Moses comes across two Israelites that were fighting and quarreling. And he's like, "Why are y'all fighting for? You're brothers." Have you ever said that before to somebody? Why are you fighting for? I say it to our three kids all the time. Why are y'all fighting for? I don't get it. Why are you all upset with each other? But that's what Moses says. Why are you fighting? Well, you're brothers. And then here is what their response is. It's in our reading today. But the man who was wronging his neighbor, of course, it was the one that legitimately did the wrong thing, he thrust him aside. He pushed Moses aside. He bit the hand that was going to feed him. What or who are you pushing back on that God has given to you? Maybe it's your spouse, it's your husband, it's your wife, and they've said some things that have really ticked you off. It's really making your water boil. They're really coming after you. But they're right. You're thrusting them aside. God has given you your husband and your wife to show you what to do, or to show you things in your life that need to be corrected. Maybe it's your boss. Oh no, you got pulled into the office and you got told, here's what you need to do, and you're doing this wrong or whatnot, and you're upset. You're irritated. You're bothered. But they're right. You do need to change that. Maybe your coworker said something. Maybe your children have approached you and have said, this just doesn't seem right. God has given all of these folks into your life to show you your blind spots, to show you things that need to change. Don't thrust them aside. Do not bite the hand that feeds you. God has given you people. God has given you things around you to point you to godliness and goodness. So don't be so quick to thrust them aside. And notice who is the one that thrust Moses aside. It was the one that was actually doing the sin. Sin blinds us and causes us not to see what is right and correct. So I wonder, what is it that you need to step back from and realize, okay, the Lord is actually speaking to me through this person, and I need to listen, and I do not need to thrust them aside. I do not need to bite the hand that is feeding me. So he thrust Moses aside, and he said, who made you a ruler and judge over us? Well, we know the answer. It was God. God made Moses the ruler and the judge over them. But again, this goes back to Moses' sin. He was doing he had the right motivation. He had the right calling. He is obviously God's chosen vessel. He is God's chosen servant to save the Israelites from Egypt. Yes, that is absolutely the case. But he is doing the wrong action at the wrong time. So Moses does got some sin involved here. But He is truly the ruler and the judge over us. And then he goes on to say, do you want to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? Here's an attitude we need to change. If you didn't watch yesterday's video, I encourage you to go back and watch that one. Is that Moses' sin. This is the attitude we need to change. That is, when we have the right motivation and the right calling and we do the wrong action, it causes bigger problems. It actually gives people legitimate beef against us, legitimate complaints. Do you want to kill me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday? Attitude to change is that sometimes when we are being used by God, when we have the right heart, but because we've done it in the wrong way or in the wrong time, it causes issues. And that's exactly what's happening with Moses right here. So going back to the sin I think we want to focus on is that we don't want to bite the hand that feeds us. And this is going to be one of the prime arguments, and Stephen is already setting this up now, the prime arguments at the final end of his sermon to say, listen, guys, you always thrust aside the person that God puts in front of you. You always thrust aside God's command to repentance. It's not the person, it's not the circumstance, it's you guys. You are thrusting him aside, and just like your ancestors thrust aside Moses, you thrust aside the great Messiah. You thrust aside Jesus Christ. You thrusted nails into his hand and you killed him upon the cross. That is going to be the final accusation that Stephen will make against him. And again, he is setting this up by preaching this biblical theological sermon, giving us an overview of the Old Testament and then tracing a particular theme and leading all the way up to Christ. I pray that has been a blessing to you. Please don't bite the hand that feeds you. And please look around you and respond positively to the people God has placed in your life. I pray that has been a blessing to you, and I will see you in the next video.